Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the OT is In podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Dr. Amy Moore joining us. Dr. Moore is a cognitive psychologist and the Director of Psychology and Research at LearningRx. She brings her wealth of knowledge and experience to our podcast. With a background that spans cognitive training, pastoring, homeschooling, and homeschooling with neurodivergence, Dr. Moore is an advocate for understanding and nurturing the unique individual. This episode is for you if you've been considering the question of how do I show my child that I accept them for who they are, but also want to help them as I notice their struggles. We talk about what cognitive training is, what can be done at home, and when to seek out help. Most importantly, we discuss how to talk about this with our own kids because understanding the why can be that motivating factor. So whether you're a parent, an educator, or someone interested in cognitive psychology, this episode offers valuable insights into how we can better support struggling learners and celebrate the uniqueness of every brain. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In podcast. My name is Sarah Collins, and today I have Dr. Amy Moore with me, who we have chatted over the years at several different homeschool conferences. This year decided to mix up our podcast, so you can find us over at the Brainy Moms podcast, and then also here at the OT is In. But Amy, I'm going to go ahead and have you introduce yourself and your background, and also how you are involved in the homeschool community.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I know. Ready? Go.
Okay, I'll work backwards. I am a cognitive psychologist, and I'm the Director of Psychology and Research at LearningRx World Headquarters in Colorado Springs. We are the largest network of cognitive training centers in the world. But I'm also a board-certified Christian counselor, a licensed pastor. I have been a curriculum coordinator, classroom teacher, teacher of teachers. I am the host of the Brady Moms podcast, and I'm an ADHD mom and a mom with ADHD. I think I probably listed. So I have a master's in education and a PhD in psychology. And I've been working with struggling learners and their families for more than 30 years. I'm from South Carolina. I've been in Colorado since 2006 with my husband and our now 3 adult sons. We just launched our youngest.
Wow.
We have all grown-ups now. It's a shocking milestone.
Yeah, shocking, huge change. And especially you homeschooled for quite a bit of time, right?
A little bit. Homeschooled our oldest in middle school,
Okay.
and then he begged to go back to regular high school, so that's okay. And then our youngest, we homeschooled for high school.
Okay.
And we actually enrolled him in college and we did some unschooling,
Yeah.
some homeschooling, yes, I'm going to give you credit for high school that you took
Right.
to college, some life stuff. In Colorado, we have a lot of freedom as parents, as homeschooling parents, to choose how we're going to give our kids credit for really cool stuff that they do.
Yeah.
And so we were really fortunate to be able to have that freedom with him.
That is really fortunate. That is not the case here at good old Pennsylvania, but that's okay. We work our way through and make sure that our kids are learning according to what Pennsylvania wants, but also according to what is important for them. So it's okay. We work through that for
Yeah.
sure. So now, as a mom, and obviously a pastor, and a cognitive scientist, how do you merge all of those three things together?
So it's actually not as hard as it sounds because if God is sovereign over everything, including our minds, then we just step into that space
Yeah.
and let the Holy Spirit direct that process. And I think, but it also gives us this foundation of saying every mind is beautiful in some way. And we just have to find that beauty and celebrate it and honor it, and then nurture those parts that have a struggle.
This is such a beautiful thing to say, especially because one of the questions that you and I talked about before, and that I get quite frequently, are from parents of neurodivergent kids who are getting mixed messages as far as thinking, yes, my kids are struggling and I want to help them and support them, versus what exactly does it mean to just accept, right? So, how do we put those two things together so that we really are supporting our children?
Yeah, one of the things that I've talked about on Brainy Moms and just in conversation is I really think that the social media trend of calling ADHD, for example, a superpower or right or any neurodivergent diagnostic category a superpower, I think that really does a disservice to kids and parents. Because the reality is, it's not a superpower, it's a struggle. And
Mm.
so while we don't want to limit our kids by their diagnosis, we don't want to define them by their diagnosis. We want to hold space for that in a way that says, I see you, see your struggle, and I'm going to help support that. We just call it a superpower. Then how does that feel when you're struggling?
Struggling. Yeah.
Oh, I thought this was supposed to be my superpower, mom. And so I think that when we can call it what it is, hey, this is a limitation, or this is a
Hmm.
struggle, or this is something we really need to work on to help you be more successful, or this is how I'm going to provide you some support so that you can be more successful. I think that's the way we should come about it with transparency and honesty and not just trying to make kids feel okay about it.
We talk a lot in my own home. My own son is neurodivergent. I talk a lot with him about your biggest strength can also be a weaker area, and also how so many of our strengths can help us to overcome some of our weaker areas. For him, and actually for myself, working memory has been a huge struggle. So I'm not gonna, yeah, just be like, oh, don't worry. This isn't a struggle. This is a superpower. But at the same time, I've also watched him be so amazing at task initiation about seeing something and getting something started because oftentimes I don't remember what I came in here to do. So he's, I'm going to start something new. And this kid has never been bored a day in his life. So I think this is an example of, yeah, we are going to work on working memory because that does affect his reading. It has affected his math abilities. It's affected so many areas of his life. But also, sure, there are great parts of your brain because of that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we do learn to compensate. Those ways of compensating is to say, oh, I'm going to do this instead.
Yeah. Now, so neuroscience and cognitive science, obviously, we know that there are norms for brain development, right? But also what we've been talking about here, there's not two brains that are exactly the same, just norms. So can you talk about how you balance those two things when you're working with clients?
Yeah, so I think that when we're giving standardized assessments where we say, okay, where are you in comparison with your peers of the same age or grade on things like working memory and attention, processing speed, and reasoning, and all of the skills that we use all day, every day for thinking and learning, it allows us to create a picture of what areas we might need to work on to catch you up, right? And so I think that from that perspective, looking at where your brain is functioning compared to where the average brain is functioning at the same age is a great starting point. And also, we have these aha moments as parents when we can see that.
Mhm.
Oh, that makes so much sense why my child is struggling here and here because his working memory is in the 12th percentile, his age. So I think that on one end, it's important to know, especially if we are seeing a struggle. But I think it's exciting to say that brains are like thumbprints. Right. So you look at a thumbprint and you recognize immediately, hey, that's a thumbprint. Right. So there are
Yeah.
characteristics about it, its shape, the way it has swirls, right? That it has these really interesting patterns, and we automatically know that's a thumbprint. Just like we can look at a brain and say, that's a brain. But every thumbprint is a little bit different, and so every brain is too. So even though in the absence of an injury, everyone has the same brain components and brain areas, the connections within those areas and from area to area are going to be a little bit different based on our experience, right? Because our experience with our environment from birth starts to create those neural pathways. And so they are going to be a tiny bit different. And that's fun to see.
Yeah.
Okay, what are your strengths and what have your experiences influenced in terms of your cognitive skills?
I love when you put together the environment and what a person's brain is starting at, and then also what they specifically need and want to do. So that's where their strengths come in of what is motivating to me and all of that. So describe to me exactly what is cognitive and what is it that you do?
Yeah. So when we think of cognitive training, it's a big field. And a lot of people think of brain training as brain games. So those apps that you can download on your
Mm,
phone or the games that you can play on a computer. And those are cognitively stimulating activities. So I would never tell someone, don't play a brain game. I would
right.
never say that because anything that we can do to stimulate our brain, we should do. But those are brain games. When we have a weakness in a cognitive skill, we keep talking about working memory, then we need something that's going to remediate and strengthen that skill beyond something that a computer can do. And so I work in that space of human delivery of intense, targeted mental tasks that strengthen those different cognitive skills, that remediate those different cognitive skills. The fun part is they are game-like. So we
Yeah.
do feel like we're interacting with kids and adults with games, but from a perspective where we understand what those cognitive strengths and weaknesses are for that person. We have customized the types of activities that we're going to do with that person to really drill down on those weak areas and rehabilitate and strengthen them. And we pace almost every one of our tasks with a metronome. And the research on brain timing is fascinating all by itself, but we use it to increase intensity because it's intensity that drives neuroplasticity. So it's that intense, target, complex
Yeah.
mental task that's repeated that rehabilitates the skill and drives neuroplasticity, helps increase BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factor, which is like miracle grow for the brain. And so, what we know definitely that aerobic activity increases BDNF. And the hypothesis is that intense cognitive activity does the same thing.
Oh, I feel like I could dig into this a lot because we use metronome within OT sessions frequently, and I use it here within our homeschool, even as far as when we're saying math facts, then we say them to a metronome to keep our rhythm. So, for parents who are listening, explain that a little bit more. Why would doing something to a metronome influence neuroplasticity, and is there a specific rate that it should be at?
Yeah, so interestingly, we start low and then we gradually increase the rate. So I think that the metronome has multiple uses, right? So the way that you use it might be a little bit different, but it does drive automaticity, right? So that when we pace it on a beat, and then we have our clients responding on
Mhm.
beat, then it really increases how automatic that skill becomes. So then we also can increase the rate so that we can remediate processing speed. So the speed in which we can process information is a pretty intractable skill to train. And so we have to do everything we can to increase the chances that whatever intervention we're using to increase processing speed is effective. And so that is one way that we can work on gradually increasing the speed in which someone can process information is by pacing it. And then the other thing is it allows us to keep an entire training session intense. So
Hmm.
if you are on a metronome, you can't take a mental break. It isn't,
Right.
okay, we're going to do this for a couple seconds and then here, let me get my materials and then we'll start the next thing. If we are going bam on a metronome, right, you can't stop.
So do you find more fatigue at the end, or is it as kids are increasing you're increasing the intensity, then they are increasing their endurance?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Yes, it can be overwhelming at first, which is why we are able to watch that child's response and pull back if we need to, slow it down, let the child or adult experience some success, and then say, okay, let's go a little bit faster this time. Let's make it a little bit more intense that time. And that's another reason that human delivery of
Yeah.
cognitive training is so important because we can manage that physiological response to stressful situations that a laptop can't manage.
Right.
And so, yes, the more you do it, the less fatiguing it becomes. And I have had clients with traumatic brain injury, for example, who really struggle with how exhausting that is. And so we'll do it for 20 minutes at first, not 90 minutes. But kids respond usually with excitement. Can there be some frustration? Yes, but we just talked about how we'll pull back a little bit. But there can be excitement in keeping up with that pace, in mastering that pace,
Yeah.
in being able to respond on beat to a metronome while doing a memory task or an attention task. And so you've got this level of complexity happening that then drives a dopamine hit when you get a high five for mastering that level. And it's just part of the whole approach. It's just
Right.
one part of the whole approach, really, that just makes it more complex and intense.
Before we keep going, I want to remind you of the purpose of Homeschool OT. The goal is to support you, the parent, so that you can then help your child be successful in what they need and want to do to occupy their time. This, occupy their time, is the true definition of occupational therapy. Homeschool OT was recently referred to as the search engine for when a child is struggling in their day-to-day life. This actually made me really happy. Now, part of this is because we all know how much time can be spent searching for answers, and some are often conflicting. So instead, we can work one-to-one together to discover the why, prioritize strategies, and implement them into your homeschool. So visit homeschoolot.com/services to see the range of options and get that personalized homeschool support that you need. Now, on with the show. So you have explained to us the why behind the metronome, which I love, especially because we use it so much here. Do you explain this to your kids or to your clients as you're going through the kind of the why behind what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. We say things like, hey, we really want to help you get better at this and this. This is
Mhm.
one of the ways that we can help you with that. And so when we can help you increase how quickly you're able to read that passage, this is one of the ways that we can help you get faster at doing something. Or, hey, you're really struggling with being able to, hear some music going on in the background while you're studying. And so this is one of the ways where we can help you really focus your attention in the real world because we know that learning doesn't occur in a vacuum. And so by having a metronome ticking, really it forces that sustained attention and that selective attention as well. And yes, we're very specific in, okay, now we're going to try this. And this is what you can expect from this task.
Laying out those expectations, so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the issues in cognitive training research in general is that idea of how does it transfer to real life? It isn't about just getting better at the training task. It's about how can these training tasks be applicable to the real life struggle? And so to be able to say, hey, when you can get better at this memory task or this attention task or this visual processing task or this auditory processing task,
Right.
that can help you read faster. That can help you reason through a math word problem a little bit more easily.
Yeah.
Or, hey, you're struggling as a quarterback to think ahead of where that ball should go. And so we're going to do some visual processing training tasks here to help you be able to expand your field and be able to visualize where that ball is going to end up or needs to end up. So we actually work with kids and adults to set goals and to really understand where their struggle is in real life and not just on that standardized test, so that then we can say, oh, okay, I've got a task here that I think can help with that.
And I think such an important part of that is knowing that, like you were saying, learning doesn't happen in a vacuum, but also the processing doesn't just affect one thing. You're visual processing to read, and then you're also visual processing to figure out where the ball's going to go. You're using so many different skills across the day. So when you're able to explain that, you can see it,
Right. And using those skills all at the same time, too. So
right?
let's say you're a teenager who's trying to learn how to drive. Well, you need strong visual processing skills because you've got to see what's happening on that road all around you. You need fast reaction time so that you can recognize, oh no, there's this car
Absolutely.
chaos.
Yes.
So you need great processing speed. You need strong attention skills because you have to pay attention to everything that's happening. You need good working memory. You need good long-term memory so that
Yeah.
you learn the route to drive to school. And so we're using all of those skills on top of each other all the time.
And compounded to make sure that one thing was not isolated, but that they're all working together. Ooh, so would you say that since within your homeschool that you were using these types of skills and types of training as well?
Absolutely. So my oldest and my youngest both went through LearningRx cognitive
Okay.
training because they both had ADHD. We knew that would be super helpful to remediate some of those weak areas. And we know we did this really big study on more than 5,000 children and adults with ADHD where we plotted their cognitive profiles, right? So we gave
Okay.
them standardized cognitive testing and we plotted, and what we found was attention isn't actually the weakest skill in ADHD, for example. It's working memory, long-term memory, and
Mhm.
processing speed. So we know that most interventions for ADHD only target attention. That's not the weakest cognitive skill. So we really need to look at the bigger picture. And so I had that bigger picture. I knew that bigger picture. And I said, yeah, we absolutely have to do some cognitive skill remediation to help you be successful.
So what changes, and maybe you need to ask your son if you're allowed to tell us, but what changes did you see from the beginning to the end within your own home?
Yeah. So I'm allowed to talk about anything except the digestive process when it
Okay.
comes to my kids.
Right. I always ask my kids before, I'm like, all right, so today's another day where I'm talking about you.
I learned it the hard way after one of them saw an Instagram reel for the podcast where I was talking about constipation in early childhood. And they were like, you can't talk
I know.
about that.
That's the end there. I draw the line.
Exactly. You talk about anything else. So Evan is my youngest, and when he was in fourth grade, he couldn't even spell his own name. And that has a domino effect, right?
Mhm.
So and he was in public school at the time. And so when you are struggling and you're that far behind your peers, then that leads to low self-esteem. It leads to
Mhm.
frustration. And the low self-esteem and frustration then turns into, I'm not going to engage the same way that I could if I wasn't struggling. And then that turns into bullying. And right, it just had this domino effect of not having any friends and then just it creating anxiety. When you are struggling to learn, that creates stress and anxiety for a child. And so we put him through cognitive training along with a reading remediation program delivered through the same cognitive training methodology
Okay.
called ReadRx. And so by seventh grade, Evan was testing into gifted and talented levels of language arts.
Wow.
And then, like I said, by the end of eighth grade, tested into college level English, passed English 101 and 102 in college as a freshman in high school with A's.
Yeah.
And so that success that he was seeing after we remediated those cognitive skills, and he had really low auditory processing skills, right? That was the reading struggle portion and word attack. And once we were able to remediate that, then it just continued to have this incremental effect on not only seeing success academically, but socially. And then his self-esteem grew and he became this extrovert, and then he became this elite musician, and just beautiful to watch him bloom.
Yeah.
Just after 9 months of some intense remediation, has had a lifetime of.
So is he able to say that? Was he able to say, I needed to work on this in my brain? And how did you explain that to him? Because I think there's a lot of parents that are like, I want to talk to my kids about their brains. I don't want to, A, make them think that there's something wrong with them and or that they're stupid. And B, I just don't even know the language or the words to start.
Yeah. I think it's super important to let your child know that you see them and you see their struggle, because they know they're struggling. And so for you to say, hey, I noticed that it was taking you a long time to complete this paper or this
Mhm.
assignment, this task. I'm wondering if this could be the reason.
I
And
love,
so
I notice and I wonder. So good.
yeah. And so I think it's super important to engage your child in a conversation about it. I wonder what it would look like if we did some assessments of those skills, depending on their age, or we tested those skills to see if that's really what is happening. Because if it
Mhm.
is, there's something we can do about it. And so I think that you come at it from, I see the struggle. I wonder what you think about that. Have you noticed that as
Right.
well? And I have some ideas I want to run by you. What do you think? Because if we have
Great.
buy-in, 9 times out of 10, you know what on your child's face? That A, you see it, you're willing to investigate it, and you're willing to do something to help them. And so,
Amazing.
yeah,
Yes. So if there's one takeaway, absolutely just to work alongside of our kids and to not be scared of that conversation. And that doesn't mean that we're not accepting who they are. That means that we're noticing where they struggle and that we are supporting them right alongside of them.
yeah. And I think that we can admit our own struggle at the same
Mhm.
time. So we normalize that everyone struggles with something. And so
Yeah.
if you ask any one of my kids what my biggest cognitive weakness is, they will tell you instantly it's
Same. See,
visual
my kids are
processing.
like, it's your working memory, mom. The fact that they know those words, though, makes me laugh.
I know.
Sorry, we're bringing you up as nerds.
Exactly. But I fail every geography question on Jeopardy, and we always
Mm,
play Jeopardy as a family because I have poor visual spatial sense.
yeah.
So I can't visualize where on a map anything is. And so my kids know mom's weakest skill is visualization.
Yeah.
So to freely admit that, I think we have to come at parenting from a place of vulnerability. We have to come at parenting from a place of, hey, this is not about disciplining my child. This is about discipling my child, right?
Oof,
And
yeah.
the root word is to teach. And so when we can partner in that process and come alongside our child and see them and know them and love them through it, man, it's awesome to get that partnership going and sustain that.
So, Amy, thank you so much for being here and for explaining all of this. And just knowing that you're coming at this from so many different angles, I think it's just really helpful, even for me as a parent, and I'm working in this field to hear you talk. So, thank you so much. How can people find you and Learning RX as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. So my podcast is Brainy Moms, and so you can find us at the Brainy Moms and thebrainymoms.com. My personal website is amymoorephd.com, and LearningRx is at learningrx.com.
All right, so many different places that we can make sure to follow up, and we'll make sure all of that is linked in the show notes as well. So thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah Collins here, and I am finishing up with the new book, A Chameleon Tale. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I finally have the actual book in my hand. Now, this is the paperback, but there are also hardback covers books available wherever you order your books. So, if you've listened to episodes 59, 60, or 61, you've heard the first 2/3 of the book, but we're going to finish up today, and be sure to stay tuned at the very end for some discussion points. So here we go. Mama, Seth, and Sally start heading back to their fig tree. Sally's color often changes to coral, but because she can zoom and zigzag around her family, her color keeps returning to a calm gold. Sally, says Mama, I know just what to do. When they get back to the tree, Mama explains that their cozy blankets will be waiting for them. This eases Seth's worries before he wonders aloud about the next step. And Seth and Sally go straight to their leaf blankets and settle in, gold and beautifully calm, ready to rest for the night. Mama finally has time to rest so she can reflect on her day, and now she turns aqua. She worked so hard to help her kids regulate their senses. Now she is worn out. Mama takes deep breaths, stretches her legs, and slowly turns to gold. She says, no matter who we are, we all have to manage our sensory systems. I'm so glad I learned how to manage mine and can help my children learn how to manage theirs. Now I'm ready to rest. She wiggles to get comfortable underneath her leaf blanket and says, my color is gold, just in time to sleep. I also know just what to do. You guys, the point of this is that parents also have to learn to regulate their sensory systems, and we can tell our children, your sensory needs are not more important than mine, but mine are also not more important than yours. Then we can have a communication system and strategies so that we can discuss these needs. So feel free to download the free book guide from homeschoolot.com and make sure to order your copy of A Chameleon Tale today wherever books are sold.